I'm Mark Kayser, and this is North American Hunter. On this week's episode, I'm hunting along the Lewis and Clark Trail. I'm looking for a prairie whitetail, one specific whitetail in fact. I want to hang my tag on him. You're watching North American Hunter. Last year, I had an opportunity to hunt with a friend of mine, Levi Duncan. Now, Levi and I had been corresponding for several years on Western hunting, and he threw out an invitation I couldn't refuse. Join up with him in Western South Dakota on properties he had been managing for big bucks. And my tag, it was good for either or, a big mule deer or a big whitetail. Now, when you get invited to a place like this, a place that probably has a lot of mature bucks, you do what your invitee asks you to. And on this hunt, Levi wanted to focus on a big mule deer, and I was more than happy to keep my attention focused on the big whitetails running around on these western creek and river bottoms.
The deer are fairly easy to pattern and get on, but it's not uncommon for the deer just to disappear for 2-3 days. So it's kind of crucial that we don't give up on a spot right away. Just kind of stick it out before we move on. That's how these deer have been acting, especially with the drought.
The first morning, we went right into the honey hole where he had been seeing all of these big deer, both the mule deer and the whitetails. First morning was perfect. Low light, a lot of cloud cover, and the deer were rutting good. They were actually traveling more than even rutting that first morning, coming off some high agricultural flats with a little bit of corn, some sunflower stubble, all the things that deer love to eat. And they were coming our way to a nice big wooded bottom where they were looking for refuge. But a lot of the deer didn't always stop in the bottom. They actually would pass through and then go up higher in the surrounding hills and hide up in those brush pockets. So you had to be real careful, real watchful. Watch the creek bottom, make sure nothing held up there, and watch those high hills, making sure they didn't hold up there. Now, we didn't see the big bucks that Levi had hoped we'd see.
We started to see a lot of the different deer that I hadn't seen yet for the year, which was a good sign. Hopefully the mother deer will come back, but it was just an odd year as like these deer were not residents of the property that we're going to be hunting.
So we shivered it out for the morning, hiked back to the truck, had a little lunch, made a new plan for the afternoon. Our afternoon hunt started with a long stalk to get into position. We weren't stalking a deer per se, we were just moving at a slow pace, trying to get into position without bumping too many deer. And we had a timekeeper right there working in our favor. What was the timekeeper? We left a nice 6x6 whitetail, a young buck bedded up in some buckbrush. We knew when he got up to move, it was likely the rest of the deer would be on their feet too. Boy, as the minutes ticked away and the sun started to set, it became obvious. For some reason, these deer were not going to move that day. It had Levi and I thinking, was there a huge front coming in that was changing up this deer movement to the point where they didn't want to move? Or was simply the rut not going? I guess we were just going to have to wait until morning to discover why the deer weren't moving. And with that, with sunset, we headed back to the truck to make a plan for the next day.
North American Hunter is brought to you by Cuddyback. Don't get blanked, get a Cuddyback. Mossberg. Built rugged, proudly American. Get your peak Realtree hat details at peakauto.com. New supercharged scent killer by Wildlife Research Center. Beyond 99%. And by Federal Premium Ammunition. One shot says it all.